According to the president, as we mentioned earlier, the pandemic is over. I think he's catching up to what most of us knew for quite some time. But you know what? Somebody needs to tell that to the Coast Guard, which even today is sticking to its COVID vaccine mandate by denying guardsmen religious accommodation requests and discharging those that are not vaccinated. In fact, last week, the U.S. Coast Guard Academy in New London, Connecticut, allegedly discharged 7 cadets after denying their request for religious exemption to the military's COVID vaccine mandate. What's going on? Well, joining us now to discuss this is retired Vice Admiral William Lee. Admiral, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Good to be back, Tony.
So, Admiral, I may have been a year or so ago, we talked about this, and we actually discussed how the Coast Guard was approaching this issue, and you were giving them the benefit of the doubt at that point. But it appears that they've gone off the rails as it pertains to this vaccine mandate. Tell us about it.
Well, you're right. The last time we talked, we were talking about this very issue, the mandatory vaccine mandate. And at that time, as I told you, if I'd have been an operational commander, I'd have been in favor of the mandate. I mean, my job when I was on active duty was to keep a ready force, because we're first responders and we got to be ready to respond. But things have changed. I mean, we're on the other side of this pandemic now. And as you pointed out already, the president himself has already declared it over. Yet we're still treating it in the military services as if it were still a raging fire. And yeah, there's still cases out there, but it's smoldering embers now, and we need to back off a little bit. I got involved in this because a lawyer representing those 7 cadets asked me to, because nobody else was advocating for them. You got 7 cadets who we went out and actively recruited, and they are the perfect DEI scorecard. I mean, there's 5 minorities and 2 Caucasian women that we have thrown out of the service when all of the services are repeatedly beating that diversity drum as hard as they can. And this makes no sense, especially when you look at it from the equity standpoint. If they were treating him equitably, they would treat him just like the other cadets at Annapolis and West Point and the Air Force Academy, where all of the unvaxxed cadets are still able to go to class while they sort this mess out in the courts. Because the whole issue revolving around the mandatory vaccine, the legality of the order and the efficacy of the vaccine itself is under question. Why don't we take a pause and let these young men and women go back to college and treat them like everybody else in the other service academies? That's my argument. Over.
So, Admiral, given what you know, why is the Coast Guard not taking that approach? What is behind this?
I can't answer that, Tony. I wish that the commandant and the vice commandant would answer it. I did have a brief conversation with the vice commandant the other day, who was a good friend of mine. And I want to make it clear, I'm not looking to attack my former colleagues, only this decision here, because to me, it's hypocrisy. If you really mean what you say about diversity and equity and inclusion, treat these people like you mean it. All right. One of the cadets is a black male who just got awarded a coveted leadership award voted on by his peers at the academy. How can you on one side of the academy think they're unsuitable for service, on the other side give them an award for exemplary service? Makes no sense at all.
Admiral, to me, given what the facts that I've seen and what you've shared here, this looks like it's just pure politics, that the administration made a policy decision and because of the politics surrounding it, afraid to back away from it.
I agree with you. At some point in time, we need leaders to step up and say, that's enough, boss. We need to turn this off, because we're no longer, the readiness issue, the threat to readiness is no longer the pandemic. It's now going to be created by the gaps as we continue to purge people out, good, healthy people who want to serve, who ask for religious exemptions and been denied them. It's going to take a long time to fill those gaps. You got to recruit them, recruiting's down, and then you got to train them. This is far more egregious to the, or has a more of an adverse impact on readiness than COVID does now. It wasn't this a year ago, but now we need to take another look at it. Over.
Well, Admiral, coming up next, I'm going to be talking with a mutual friend of ours, Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, about that very fact. When you look at the volatility of the world in which we live today, now is not the time that we need to have a gap, that we need to be full force, totally ready for what may confront our nation. Unfortunately, I think these policies, as you said, the Church of Wokeology is alive and well in the United States military armed services, and unfortunately, that is hampering our readiness. Admiral Lee, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, sir.